Holocaust is one of the worst genocides in the world's history. It lasted from 1933 through 1945. The Holocaust was dictated by Adolf Hitler. His reasoning for starting the Holocaust comes from the anti-Semitism towards Jews. They decided to expand Germany by invading other countries by taking all the Jewish population and exterminating them. They called it the final solution. Most of the Jewish population that was taken lived in other areas of Europe like Poland. Gypsies and people with mental disabilities were also targeted. Around 5 to 6 million Jews out of 9 million were killed throughout the Holocaust. Nazi Germany went about killing the Jewish population by starting concentration camps. They would sort people out based on ability. Those who were sick or disabled were immediately killed because of their inability to work. Those capable would work from sunrise to sundown. Most would later die from being malnourished or from disease.
How much would you say that genocide have shaped our future?
Well, since the beginning of time, it's been there, right? So we look at specifically the topic of genocide as trying to exterminate a whole race of people. You still see that going on in other parts of the world, not so much here. I don't think. I think that the world today is more accepting than it's ever been, and we continue to move in the right direction. And some people believe that, some people don't. But if you look historically, you see it. And if you talk to someone who lived in Mississippi in the 1950s and someone who lives in Mississippi in the 20-teens, it's a completely different place. It's a completely different thing. I think there's less hate. There are less parents raising their children to hate, especially in this part of the world. So I think things are getting better, but I mean, if you're asking me as a realist, will hate end? I don't think hate will ever end. So I would think that if you're asking me in the future, how is genocide going to play a role, I think that we can hope that it continues to get better in the parts of the world where genocide is continuing to happen. We can hope that it'll get better, just like discrimination and racism and hate has gotten better here in the United States. Hopefully we can see that trend continuing. But man, in parts of the world where people are really, really competing for resources, like in parts of Africa where those warring factions are having it out, they're trying to exterminate people to survive. So in this country, we're lucky we don't have to do that. So I could see things getting better, but I could also see them not, but I hope they get better.
How different is genocide now than the past?
Same thing. I think that things are getting better. It depends on what part of the world. I think a lot of the hate that you see, and even outside the realm of genocide, but just hate and competition, one group against another. I think that it has a lot to do with resources sometimes. This group of people and that group of people are competing for a very limited amount of resources, so it becomes a thing of survival, which is terrible. But you look back and all the way to the beginning of time and look at where your resources and your empires. If you look at world history, one civilization trying to destroy another to fight for what? Resources, supremacy, things like that. I think if we get in a global bind for resources where we're fighting more and more for water or food or something like that, then it becomes, we may go back to seeing something cyclical in that we may go back to where we used to be because we're fighting for resources. Again, we're lucky in this country to have as many resources as we do. The poor in this country live better than the poor in any other country. I hope we don't see that cyclical thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if we run low on resources. Hopefully you and I won't live to see those times, but I wouldn't be surprised if it went back to the way it was in ancient times to just fight for survival too.
What would the consequences be back then for genocide?
Back then, you got one group of people killing another group of people. The outcome's going to be your people win or your people lose. So you think back to your world history classes where one group runs into another group, and especially when you look at the Middle East, and that's Middle Eastern history, that run of the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Hittites, I know the popular one is the Hebrews. They got kicked all around the Middle East and killed for who they are and things like that, and that's continuing to happen in the Middle East. The fight between the Arabs and the Palestinians and the Israelis. You see a lot of that violence, but back then the penalty was you're dead, or the reward was you're alive. So, I hate to make it that simple, but that's what it was.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and
You're welcome.
sharing stuff.
You're welcome, bud.
Like the Holocaust, Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, tried to eliminate what they thought didn't fit in the society they wanted. They targeted educated people like doctors, lawyers, and current and former military police. Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims were also specifically targeted in an effort to create a society that did not have any competition, in which they worked for the common good. People who thought were a threat to the society they wanted were put into living arrangements. They were put into categories based on their trust they had for them. The similarities between Hitler and the Nazi Party and Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, and how they eliminated both the people they thought was inferior, are very visible. Khmer Rouge used starvation as their main way of mass killing. They would make people living in the cities walk long miles to farms. Most would die on the journey there.
Do you think history repeats itself through genocide?
I think it does. We've seen since the Holocaust, because it's one everybody knows about, we've seen repeated genocides, Cambodia, Rwanda, Darfur, Bosnia, and then the events in Syria are becoming very alarming that we are afraid genocide's happening there. Different minorities are being targeted. So it does seem to be a continuation. The Nuremberg trials and the punishment the Nazis received apparently didn't scare off enough dictators that they keep doing it, and this is how they seize power.
All right, cool. How much would you say genocide has shaped our future?
Genocide impacts populations, it impacts refugees, it shifts the way people migrate, people move, it forces people to move. We've seen this immigration of Muslims, not really even just to the US, which is of course a big debate here, but all throughout Europe they've absorbed this surplus population because they can't stay where they're supposed to live because it's too dangerous. So, and we saw this too in Rwanda, the Tutsis fled to safety in the neighboring countries, which caused those governments to become unstable as well. So it changes everything about how the world functions, especially in surrounding countries where genocide is happening.
All right, cool. Is genocide as common now than it was back then?
I think genocide probably has happened since man first decided that other people were different than themselves, but our weaponry has advanced itself so proficiently that now when different groups decide to attack each other, sometimes we see this very displaced balance of weaponry, and so we see groups just massacre and obliterate another group because they have higher technology. Of course, when we look at Rwanda, it was just a sheer numbers. They murdered each other with machetes for the most part, so it was a numbers issue. But I think forever this has been ongoing. It's just that now we should be modern and civilized, and we shouldn't be doing this, and we recognize that people have rights to exist.
All right, cool. Thank you for your time.